I cut myself shaving, but if there's one thing Zelda games have taught me recently, it's that food will heal your injuries. I'm feeling better already. Ah! Well, hey there, guys. I'm Axel the Beast, and this is the Curiosity Shop, the ZeldaEngine.net video mailbag where I answer your Zelda questions. And as you can see, I got a bit of a new video setup here. I've got a new camera, a little bit new audio, some different lighting setup, which it might be a little finicky. I still got to mess with it a little bit. Tell me what you guys think about it, of course. And I apologize for the mess. I've got like a lot of Magic the Gathering cards back there that I need to sort through, and I don't have anywhere else to put them. And you can't see them, but it's Zelda-oriented enough, right? You know, it's Magic the Gathering. All right, so let's get to the questions. This will be the new time, which is the old time for the mailbag. Tuesdays. It'll be great. It'll be fine. JP asks, do you know what happens to Jabu-Jabu after Link goes forward in time in Ocarina of Time? How could he even get out of that small pond? You know, no one knows about this. There's no answer really. It is odd though. I just get the sense they wanted to do a different thing with that area, but you really got to wonder because I mean, okay, so Jabu-Jabu is a god. Maybe he can just fly. Maybe we assume he's a whale, but that's a disrespect to the Zora religion because after all, Lord Jabu-Jabu is their guardian deity. He just probably flew away. I mean, maybe he just decided to become water. We don't know. Are you versed in Zora religion? Narion asks, do you think the sages in Ocarina of Time die? It seems like every sage you meet disappears inside the temple. Darunia is last seen going into the boss room, but when you get there, he's gone. Heck, you even see Nabooru basically being killed by Kotake and Koume right in front of you. Well, she might have been getting just attacked, or they were didn't they say they were gonna brainwash her again? I can't remember for sure. Anyway, it's a very interesting thought. You know, you might not remember this about me, but I'm a bit of a skeptic with a large number of Zelda theories in the past. Granted, that's weird coming from me with my Dark Tribe obsessive theory crafting, but that was like an attempted predicting. I don't know. But I've been a skeptic. There are very few theories where I've looked at it and like, oh yeah, that's really interesting. That's a really possible idea. But this is actually one of them. I think that's a really intriguing thought. And you know, it definitely is weird how surreal some of those sequences are. The way that they do it so that the sages just go straight to the Chamber of Sages, it's kind of odd, it's kind of mystical, and the Chamber of Sages music certainly contributes to that vibe. So, yeah, you know, it's an interesting idea. One thing it reminds me of is in Twilight Princess, where you meet the sages, and they all look the same, and they're clearly in some kind of spiritual form. So I wonder if maybe that's the explanation, not that, you know, they're dead, but that they take on like a spiritual quality. And I think that's kind of backed up by the ending we see where they all kind of zoom to the end of, they like in spirit form seemingly go to the top of Death Mountain and look out over Hyrule after everything gets saved during, I think, the ending credits. That doesn't necessarily mean they didn't die. I just think that they're going with the idea that the sages have spiritual power and take spiritual form, blah, blah, blah. That's my impression, but it's a really interesting idea. I gotta hand it to you, man. The True Red Link asks, did you like the ability to dye your armor in Breath of the Wild? If so, would you like it to return with more options? You know, okay, I will answer this question with a story. A while back, I bought XCOM Enemy Unknown. I believe that's what it's called. It's the first of the newer XCOMs. And when it was on a Steam sale. And it was on sale, so I could get it and the DLC for a lower cost. And there was this DLC that all it really was like some extra color options and maybe a few more customization options for your soldiers. And it had terrible reviews because they were asking you extra money to just do that, and it wasn't really that much. There's a little bit more to it, I think, like a couple extra missions or something, but that's the idea. And it had terrible reviews, but I bought it without any regrets. Give me the ability to customize my stuff, and I will do it with reckless abandon. Yes, yes, definitely. A Link in Time asks, how can more story elements be implemented in a future open-world Zelda game? Well, okay, so there's a lot of ways you can do it. I've talked about some of them in previous articles, but these are like way back, like back when I first started working on Zelda Dungeon. Breath of the Wild is an interesting approach because they have some story going on throughout the game, but a lot of the big elements are more referencing stuff that happened in the past. It's sort of the Metroid Prime approach, where Metroid Prime was a game that had an epic story, but one that happened a long time ago, and you're learning about it in retrospect, and it informs what's going on currently. There's some stuff that's going on more currently, but you find out about most of the story through records, and that's kind of like what happens in Breath of the Wild. That's one way to do it, but there are other ways too. one of the ways that I think showed up in one of the recent Uncharted games is there's this sequence where you can free roam and go to a bunch of different locations, and they have these puzzles you have to solve. And at each of the locations, your characters share like a dialogue together, and there's a linear conversation, right? They have this, as I understand, I've never played it, but this is what I've heard. They have the same discussion at the first one and the second one and the third one, but the background's different. This is a really interesting idea what you could do with something like Phantom Hourglass that really builds up like a relationship between characters like Link and Linebeck and Ciela, where you do, I mean, Zelda always has the partner characters, right? You can do that in a lot of different ways as you explore the world. One strategy I came up with for a game concept of mine was to have events happen strictly to where they are. You know what I mean? Like, you know, you go to the fire dungeon and there's a story thing going on there, and the forest dungeon, blah, blah, blah. But those events take on new meaning based on what you've already done. So in the example in this game, in one dungeon, you sort of start finding out about what the bad guys are up to. But in another dungeon, the bad guys start finding out about you. So there's this different layout of the tension of how things build up. Based on where you go first, even though the events are the same in each area. And furthermore, if you're a really clever writer and you're really willing to put the work into it, you can actually change dialogue and little scripting events based on where you go first. Like if you meet a character in one place because you went to that dungeon first or that area first, maybe he'll show up somewhere else and he'll talk about those events. That takes a lot more work on the dialogue and some scripting, but you can make it even fairly subtle or really big depending on how you want to do it. And you can even go as crazy as branching paths, but you don't need to tell really cool stories in open games. And there's also, it's worth knowing that not every section of the game needs to be totally open. You can have areas where you can choose where to go, and areas that only happen after you meet certain objectives. That's kind of Zelda's long-running strategy with that, where they, you know, have the 3 dungeons and then 3 more type thing after a plot twist. You can play around with that too. But there's a lot of ways to do it, and I think I've gone on about this quite long enough. Vanessa28 asks, would you like to see Sia return in a Zelda game? What do you think of Hyrule Warriors in general? Hyrule Warriors I've not played, but I'm really big on the idea of spin-offs in the Zelda series, and though I'm not the biggest fan of Dynasty Warriors, that's an uninformed statement to begin with because I haven't played one. This is an excellent excuse for me to play one, and again, I'm really into spin-offs. I'm really into the idea of playing around with the way you play in a world, especially when it doesn't even interfere with the main series anyway. Sia, I don't know a lot about her, but I do know that she is, I mean, there's a lot of interesting character designs in Hyrule Warriors, and it'd be interesting to see a lot of elements in the Zelda series again. As for her design, it's a little intense for the general Zelda audience, but we've had, you know, teen-rated Zelda games before, so it's not like it's that weird. And, you know, they may or may not redesign her. I'm not opposed to seeing really any character in the series again at some point. Stone Tower asks, what do you think of the Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition announcement? I think it's sweet, because again, I haven't, you know, played it myself, and this will be the excellent opportunity to do so since they finally merged all the stuff together from the 2 versions, and have all the DLC, as I understand, and apparently new content. It's very much a definitive edition, which is the kind of thing you hear a lot in the video game industry, but it's nice to see that it really looks like it totally is that. I'm just very excited. I think it's going to be I'm looking forward to that as the version I'll be playing, and it should be pretty awesome. Tristan asks, do you think Hyrule Warriors should be canon, and if it were, where do you think it would fit on the timeline? Well, I fully check out of timeline discussions. I've done this for a long time. The only time I really get into it is the obvious connections, and complaining about timeline stuff. As I understand, Nintendo hasn't really been acknowledging timeline placements much at all since Hyrule Warriors. Or, I mean, since Hyrule Historia. Ooh, that was a weird one. As I understand, Hyrule Warriors is a little bit of like a pretty wild plot setup with a lot of like the Smash Brothers crossover vibe to it. But you know, I'm not opposed to it fitting in the timeline. There's weirder games that have shown up in the timeline, like the Forged Swords titles. So you know, yeah, I mean, whatever. I don't care about the timeline though. Yigahim asks, would you like a return to 2D Zelda? Well, you know, I talked about in the last mailbag, I believe, that I really miss the sprite-based Zelda games. So, yeah, definitely. I really like pixel graphics in general, pixel art graphics in general, but I also am just generally fond of the format. That said, you know, ignoring the sprite thing, we basically did with Link Between Worlds. There's some 3D interaction with the wall crawling you know, turn into a painting and stuff, but I would like to see that style of Zelda game never go away, because there's things you can do in it, and a vibe to it, and a gameplay style to it that's different than the other games. So I definitely don't want to see it go away. I think we have kind of kept getting it, but if we could get a full-on 2D sprite-based one, that'd be pretty sweet too. So yeah, there you go. Mr. JD asks, do you think there should be hand-to-hand combat in future Zelda games? I think it would be awesome to see Link throwing punches. Well, yeah, you know, okay, so this is the thing I really like about Breath of the Wild, and maybe this is a little controversial, because I know people really miss the green outfit being the normal outfit throughout the whole game, and miss, like, having the Master Sword and whatnot. I've never been the biggest fan of Link as a character, so the idea of customizing the look and making myself look how I want is really cool to me, and I don't really strongly associate or favor hand swords as a cool weapon. So, like, straight up, right now in Breath of the Wild, I'm wearing a bandana, and I got a big honking sword as tall as my body on my back, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, I think anything that they can do to increase the ability to just be you is an interesting idea, and even if they don't do it like they do in Breath of the Wild every game, doing it some games, or just having, you know, abilities like that would be cool. Would be really cool. That said, I did come up with an idea once of having a game where you have the power gloves, power gauntlets thing, but you can punch with them. So I think even if they didn't do full-on hand-to-hand and just did it with a super item, that'd be pretty sweet. Imagine if you punched blocks and stuff. That'd be pretty awesome. Black Wolf White Angel asks, what do you think of Tingle tights in Breath of the Wild? Glorious! Just, you know? Alright, that's it for this time, guys. Be sure to send your questions to the contact information in the description. We definitely need a lot of questions because, you know, it's my job. Just gotta answer your guys' questions, so keep them coming. It's been great answering your questions again after all this time. And I did upload an explanation of where the heck I've been on my channel just a little bit ago. So, you know, check that out. And I'll see you guys later. It might not heal me, but it does taste good. In the words of the immortal Raymond Reddington, everyone likes apples.